Welcome to Capital City News, your source for staying informed and engaged with Salt Lake City government. I'm your host, Brian Young with Salt Lake City TV. On our episode today, we spoke with Laura Briefer, Salt Lake City's Public Utilities Director. Our History Minute is about the White Tower of Isengard built at the ZCMI Center. But before we get to those, let's take a look at our legislative update, our look back, and our look ahead.
At its August 24th meeting, the City Council approved the city's capital improvement program, funding 47 projects, and received an update on the mayor's K-12 mask mandate. To learn more, visit slc.gov/council. With kids under the age of 12 unable to receive vaccines, Salt Lake City Mayor Erin Mendenhall exercised her emergency powers to require all Salt Lake City schools to mandate masks in grades K-12 for all students, faculty, and visitors. This step will ensure a safer learning environment for the children of Salt Lake City. For those of you still leaving your home, be sure to get your vaccination, mask up, and keep up your social distancing. Salt Lake City is still experiencing a significant drought. Do what you can to reduce your own water usage, and don't hesitate to reach out to Salt Lake City and report issues of water overusage. With your help, we'll be able to make water a lasting commodity for our community. Learn more about water conservation at slc.gov/utilities/conservation.
Thanks to the voter-approved Funding Our Future bond, road construction season continues in Salt Lake City. For our road construction update, we'll be taking a look at projects on State Street and L Street.
L Street, between 7th and 8th Avenue, is part of our Funding Our Future Local Streets program. It has new curb, gutter, sidewalk, and asphalt. Salt Lake City Public Utilities is working on State Street at 500 South. They are currently replacing a water line from the 1920s. For more information or to see a map of all of the city's Funding Our Future bond street reconstruction projects, visit slc.gov/bondmap.
To keep up with these and all of our Funding Our Future bond street reconstruction projects, be sure to visit slc.gov/bondmap. We spoke this week to Laura Briefer, Salt Lake City's Public Utilities Director, and she talked to us about how development and water conservation go hand in hand.
People are seeing, a lot of new high-rise buildings and other development happening within our city. Our economy is booming in that regard. And of course, the obvious question during a drought like the one we're experiencing this year is, do we have the water to provide for all of this new growth? And even further, we've had some questions related to, is this new growth somehow, will my water supply be affected by that? So does it affect current users on the system? And I think it's a really good idea to talk about how we plan for water supply and demand. Salt Lake City has carefully planned and managed its water resources for future growth for many, many years, more than a century. There's a lot of iterative planning as well as stewardship of our water resources. And it is really important that our land use planning is integrated with water resource planning. And I think Salt Lake City does a pretty good job of that. I think long-term water supply planning is one of Salt Lake City's great strengths. We have, pretty much since Brigham Young arrived here in 1847, the city's been very proactive in making sure that it has water supplies not only for people currently here, but for future generations. And they've done this in a variety of ways. One of the ways is that appropriate amounts of water have been acquired over the last century and a half. That includes water supplies from our mountain streams and groundwater. It also includes investing in significant storage and becoming partners in water storage projects such as Deer Creek Reservoir, Mountain Dell Reservoir, and Little Dell Reservoir. And the planning that we do for water supply and demand is very science-based. We look at the amount of our water supplies, both current supplies and future supplies that we intend to develop. In addition, we look at our best estimates of population growth, and we do that a variety of ways as well, working with agencies such as the Wasatch Front Regional Council and the state to look at land use and to look at population changes. So the short answer to the question of do we have water supplies for the future is yes, we do. However, that comes with a caveat that based on our last round of water supply and demand planning that we completed in 2019 out to the year 2060, we take a number of factors into account. One factor that is a pretty significant one is climate change. So our last plan, we included a 15% factor for climate change that could account for either 15% loss of supply or a 15% increase in demand due to hotter temperatures or some combination of the two. We also take into consideration other redundancy factors. So we're really lucky that we have a diversity in our water supplies. Some communities might have a single source that they rely on, a single well, for instance. We have a number of sources spread out through the mountain area, the mountain streams, and as I mentioned before, our storage reservoirs. And we take into consideration redundancy. So for instance, if infrastructure came offline, if we had some kind of infrastructure failure at a treatment plant or a water quality event, say a harmful algal bloom in one of our water sources, we look into the future to see, do we have enough water supply to meet demand given those redundancy factors as well. So our water supply and demand planning is very, very conservative. We also plan for the historic dry year, and we base all of our planning on that historic dry year, even though other years might see more precipitation or more snowpack. We always plan for what we've historically seen as the worst year, and that's so that we don't overestimate our ability to meet demand through our water supplies. Our last plan did say that by 2060, we're going to need to increase conservation efforts. Salt Lake City has already done a great job in terms of conservation. Since the year 2000, we've conserved approximately 27.7%, which exceeds any of the goals that were set previously. We're going to need to conserve more, and we have plans in place to conserve more. And again, that's just to be proactive for things like climate change, and to make sure that we're not in the situation where we have disruptions in our water supplies. More information about our long-term planning can be found at our website at slcgov.com/utilities. We have our water conservation master plan, our water supply and demand plan, and our water shortage contingency plan, all posted on that website.
Now it's time for our History Minute. Back in the 1970s, J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings weren't nearly as popular or ubiquitous as they are today. But that didn't stop Ralph Bakshi, a legendary animation director, from setting his sights on bringing the cult books to life. He used a blend of live action and animation in a groundbreaking new process to bring the story to the big screen. To promote the movie, the ZCMI Center Mall in Salt Lake City built their very own replica of the Tower at Isengard, home to Saruman the White. It was large enough to have a daily performance of a Lord of the Rings show written by local playwright Richard Kramer and performed by 6 actors in fantasy costumes. Kids could tour the castle and play in the mall, all in anticipation of the first on-screen adaptation of Tolkien's masterwork. The film was popular at the box office, and fantasy fans in Utah came in droves to see it, helping it earn more than $30 million. But reviews were mixed with critics. ZCMI Center Mall did many movie promotions over the years, but was bulldozed in 2006 to make way for the City Creek Mall development. That's it for another episode of Capital City News. Remember, the best way to stay engaged is to stay informed. You can do that by following us on social media at SLC.gov, by subscribing to us on YouTube, and watching us on Channel 17. So until next time, I'm Brian Young with Salt Lake City TV.